Why have I quit my job? Why have I, bought a van? And why am I going to drive around the country? Well, I'm passionate about the idea that you need to be heard. And I want to stitch these stories together across the states. We're going to find the commonalities. And it's going to be really an amazing experience. And I look forward to you joining me on the jar. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Mental Health Today. I'm your host, Ken, and it's another beautiful day here in Durango. It's where I happen to be for the jar, interviewing people here in their homes. I just did a great interview just came back before I'm sitting down with our next guest, Mark, here on the Mental Health Today show. But for the jar show, this week I met two super high-performing athletes living here in Durango, and they are one is a trail / obstacle runner, long distance, and the other one is just a pure long distance runner. And they are just, it's peak athletics to meet two real world-class athletes and to sit down with them, have a conversation is just fantastic. Great motivation. And also to give a man like that a manly hug and to feel a human body that is so wired and just absolutely muscle and bone and sinewy. It's the only way I can describe it. I mean, who the heck else runs up for 100 miles and runs up 24,000 feet of elevation?
Oh my gosh.
It's just amazing. But anyway, thanks for joining us today. It's a great, what you saw in that little video is me expressing kind of my ideas of what I would see in the road with the jar. And it turned out the common thread was mental health. I didn't see that in my radar, was not on my bingo card for the show, but it's really what came about was people's struggles and stories and journeys. And I started this podcast so we could highlight people that are in the space doing something different to kind of affect change, because I'm a big believer, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same results, right? So mental health crisis is not going in our direction. We need change. We need people with real experience and real passion. And our next guest got some real experience and he's pretty passionate about it, turned his whole life over into it. So Mark, welcome to the show. Thanks for being a guest. Thanks for taking time out of your day.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ken. I really appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's gonna be kind of fun. We talked offline a little bit as I was reading your story. I was struck by the fact that you had epilepsy, but how you got epilepsy was really interesting to me, or at least maybe the onset of it was through sports. You can tell that story at some point, but also I shared my own concussion story and how surprising it is. And I probably still, I'm sure I'm somewhat still affected by it because it was a pretty serious concussion. You lose 4 or 5 hours of your day, you probably damaged your brain, some permanent damage. And I don't know as much as you would know about this as well. So it'd be interesting to see your take on that. But our next guest, Mark is interesting person, taken not tragedy, but definitely a life event, and you turned it into something really positive. Mark, maybe tell us a little about what you're doing now. Who are you? What are you doing now? What kind of, maybe we'll peel it back and talk about the how that journey came about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, today I work with companies helping them incorporate mental health and well-being into their strategies and their plans. And it's understanding that a lot of it is employees now making this a priority. And so companies are feeling like they need to. I've been in the workplace mental health space for 20 years. And it felt like when COVID hit, companies just kind of woke up and wanted to do so much around mental health. And that was great. It was one of those, I've been waiting 15 years for this.
Yeah, I've been banging on your door for 15 years. Exactly. You wouldn't even return my call.
I'm glad you're here now, but yes, there's a lot we can be doing. And so that's what I'm doing now. I work for myself. I truly help companies put strategies in place, design custom programs. So I do a lot of training, a lot of coaching, both group and individual, consulting on the different benefits out there.
Okay.
And you mentioned kind of where my story started, and I think it's one of those where, you have to have some experience to look back on to realize what molded you and
Yes.
drove you to
Yes.
be who you became or who you become. And for me, it was being diagnosed with epilepsy when I was in high school. It was due to concussions in high school football. And beyond that, it really changed my life with the trajectory I wanted to go career wise. Back then,
Mm.
I wanted to go into law enforcement. And actually, at first, I didn't realize that had been shut down for me. And it was only in my freshman year of college, I was speaking to the medical director for the Dallas Police Department. And he was like, yeah, no agency anywhere in the world is going to sign off on you carrying a gun if you're having seizures. And I was like, oh, great point. Never really thought about that. And so had this kind of
time for a new career.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I had this moment of searching, and when you have epilepsy, you're in your head, you're always wondering, or at least I was always wondering when the next seizure is going to happen.
Yeah.
What's going to trigger it, all that stuff. And so you can really get down, get into some bad places. I still work with the Epilepsy Foundation here in Colorado very extensively around their mental health programs, because I really didn't have anything growing up. No one ever said, do you know how to manage your stress? They told me I had to, kind of follow 4 rules in life: take my medication, reduce my alcohol, 8 hours of sleep every night, and reduce your stress. But no one ever said really how to do that.
How do you reduce your stress when you're terrified? You don't know when you're going to wake up again on your back staring at strangers.
Exactly. And I was, going into my senior year in high school, and I was like, sleep and no alcohol. Yeah. Not exactly on the docket for this year. So, there were some immediate changes and then some longer term changes that I didn't fully recognize. And when I was in that bad space in college, what I did find out is that helping other people really allowed me time to get out of my own head and just focus on them. And so I did a few different volunteer activities and just kind of allowed that to begin driving me. And I eventually ended up in graduate school getting a master's in counseling psychology. I'm a licensed therapist.
Oh, interesting. I missed that part.
Yeah. So I'm an LPC here in Colorado, licensed professional counselor. And then I'm a board certified coach, which is a credential only available to people with a clinical background. Because I do a lot of mental fitness coaching now, but I'm a little bit of an odd bird because, like, in graduate school, there were only 13 people in my cohort. 2 guys, me and another guy, and like he immediately got out of the clinical world to get into like college recruiting or something. So just by me being a male, I was pretty unusual. But then I wanted to look at the workplace. I wanted to find a common denominator where we could help a large group of people. And my professors kind of didn't know what to do with me. They're like, we teach people to do individual and group therapy and to, work in an agency or in private practice. And I was like, well, I kind of like the workplace and finding a way to impact a large group of people all at once. And so they pointed me to employee assistance programs, or EAPs. I don't know if you've heard of these. They're mainly known for free counseling sessions for companies, but there's a lot of other things they do. And I started in that field, and for about 5 years did behavioral risk consulting, which was helping companies address employees in distress in real time. So these were possible suicidal employees, homicidal employees, threats of violence, acts of violence, employee death, positive drug screens, like kind of the underbelly of the American workforce.
Say, this does not sound like a career I want to be in law for very long.
You sit in a cubicle, a call drops in your ear from anywhere in the US, and it's either an employee who is struggling, who's in distress, and so they had to get kicked to a clinician, or it's like an HR director saying, I have this employee crying at their desk, I don't know what to do. And like it got dicey at times because we were messing with people's livelihood, or not messing with them, but their livelihood was impacted. Like I had a death threat made against me one time because this guy couldn't stay sober at work, and we were working with him, trying to help him get sober, and he just wasn't at that place yet. So he got fired, and like my company had security walk me to and from my cubicle for 2 weeks to the edge of the company property. It's like that was my start in it. And then I moved to training, where I developed a catalog of trainings on wellness for companies and mental health, and then 10 years in sales and account management, with 4 of those years working with some of America's largest companies, helping them design custom wellness programs. And I worked for Anthem Insurance, and they're a medical insurance company. So they're not going to lose business because their behavioral health or EAP offerings aren't up to snuff, because those are pennies on the dollar compared to what they can charge for medical insurance. And so I was given kind of this permission to design whatever I wanted, whatever they wanted. Just keep them happy. You know, your programs aren't that expensive. Just keep them happy. And so I had this front row seat to see what some of the largest companies in America did to design custom mental health programs for their employees. And so I left my job in 2021, and now I work with a lot of small and mid-sized companies, helping them see the options available to them, because usually that size company has an off-the-shelf menu they have to choose from. And you know, the gigantic corporations who have, you know, wellness teams and benefits teams and all this stuff, they can get really creative. And so I try and take that creativity I saw and was a part of, and help companies see they have more options than just the standard offerings out there.
Yeah, and this is all EAP related. You're saying the EAP part, or you doing the EAP plan? You're doing a more holistic EAP plan, or are you really focusing in on the mental health piece of it?
Yeah, no, it's not really EAP driven anymore. I left that industry when I started my own company, but it's a lot of those practices I learned. So for example, one thing is, you know, mental health is an umbrella term with illness on one side, well-being on the other. Yet companies, they don't promote mental health very often, so they always focus on the illness side, signs and symptoms, you know, how to talk to someone, all that. And there's this group of employees, you know, I like the term worried well, who don't need to see a therapist yet, but could possibly need to if they keep going in the direction they're going. So if we can grab them before they get there, then, you know, maybe they never need to enter into that fractured mental health system that we have. So that's a lot of my focus now, because EAP was very reactive. Hey, you're struggling, come to us for counseling. A lot of my messaging, and this is what I worked with, you know, the large employers who I had as accounts, their messaging was more well-being based, and they understood that it wasn't an either or. It was, we need to promote the heck out of it. You know, they're recruiting a ton of employees. They're seeing the data that mental health is more important, and that younger generation want to talk about it more and want this promoted more. So the companies I work with understand that all of that play into not only the performance of their employees, but their ability to hire in the future and to retain and adapt based on what employees of younger generations are going to want.
I had a couple of questions come to mind. Not quite sure what order to ask them in. Because the other one's kind of a rabbit hole. The second one's more of a rabbit hole, kind of a conversation changer. What is the most glaring, like when you come into companies right now, what's the most like the, you know, you walk in, it's like, obviously this is going to be the problem in 9 out of 10 companies. And I know, like, as people, like, we try to not think of the solution before we see the real case. What are you kind of seeing? What are you holding yourself back from, you know, walking into a new client and going, I'm pretty sure I know what this is, because it's been in the last 8 clients.
Yeah. I mean, I think understanding motivations, because some groups want to check the box. Hey, mental health is May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so let's do a training, let's post an article on the internet site, check the box, say we did something for this year. So that's one type of company. You have others that, you know, we'll put a training calendar in place and we'll talk about it, and then you have other companies that we'll add new vendors. Hey, there's this new Gee Whiz service out there, an app that, does mindfulness or whatever.
Just for you.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a lot of how companies think about it. And very few, and this is the message that I try and get across, or one of them is very few companies look at leadership when it comes to mental health and how can they support their employees. What's interesting about that, though, is that the 2023 global workplace survey from the Workforce Institute said that managers, 70% of managers have the same amount of impact on an employee as their spouse. So think about that. Your boss has just as much impact on you as your spouse. And I imagine people would agree with the idea, happy spouse, happy house, and when it's not that way, it can be stressful and exhausting.
Yes.
And you're walking on eggshells. And if that's how you're living around your leader at work, then your mental health is never going to reach above, a certain point. Yet companies are so focused on, hey, look at this new thing we have. And what employees are hearing is, oh, now I have to go do something else. I have to go download an app or call an 800 number or create a profile before I can, get help. And all those things are necessary. I get that.
Yeah, you gotta have them.
Yeah. But companies rely too heavily on vendor partners and benefits to truly address workplace mental health. And for me, it starts with your leaders, and it's not just educating them on signs and symptoms and how to talk about and all this. It's a space to say, hey, how are you doing? It seems like it's kind of nuts out there, and allow leaders to say, yeah, shit's crazy right now.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm stressed more than I normally am. And this isn't diving deep into their psyche or anything like that. It's just, hey, these people have a lot going on. And just because they have the title and a higher paycheck doesn't mean they're not human. And the influence they have is gigantic. So why not focus on taking care of them?
Yeah. And educating them, right? Giving them the tools on also just that displacement, conversations they have. It's so true. My worst days in corporate were working for monsters. And worst days of my life, I should say, because it wasn't corporate. It was, it's everything. It just permeates your life. If you're in a toxic workplace where your boss is, not helping you, boy, man, that's life-changing, life-altering.
Yeah. And, organizations will, again, focus so much on these external factors and not really pause and say, how are our leaders impacting our employees' mental health? And can we be doing anything to support our leaders, knowing the ripple effect is real? Because, this goes back to the concept of emotional contagion. And anyone can, spread an emotion through a group. So what type of emotion are your leaders spreading? And is there anything you can do to help them spread, more positive ripple, I guess? And, that starts with taking care of them.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I think I'm always combating, or, people in this field are combating. And that is this internal perception at companies that wellness programs are really for employees. If you're a manager or a leader of some type, you really should be able to handle this. Are you going to take a mental health day?
It's very true, Mark. It's really true.
So
I never thought of that.
So companies that, kind of go all in on, hey, we're going to take care of our leaders, are demonstrating to employees, hey, you can advance here. Because think of an employee sitting there going, oh, I want to be a leader here someday. And evidently my leaders don't have time to take advantage of wellness challenges or personal days or whatever. Well, I want to be a leader here too. So I guess I can't do that.
Or worse, when you get to become a leader, they don't give you time off for that.
Yeah. So
you don't have access to those because you don't need, that's also a bad message. It's the other question I had in my mind. This is so a real quick comment back on one thing you said earlier, which I completely aligned to, which is that, what did you call the group that's doing okay? They're well.
The worried well.
Worried well, right? I'm really a believer in the education part and the tools and information and knowledge people, so they know, what is my current state. I mean, I don't even know how to check my own mental health state. What's my dashboard? It'd be great if people had a little dashboard at work, and then they could find out, um, how I am doing relative to other people. Oh, I'm not alone. And what are some of the tools that I can use to keep? I'm a 5. I don't want to be a 7. How do I? And I think like that's what you're saying is we give tools to people so they don't become 7s, that they can become a 3.
Yeah, yeah. And in my experience, I've seen this so many times. Benefits teams or HR get so excited about a new service they're adding, a new app or some type of on-demand learning, and then it doesn't get utilized. And that's a shame, because like you just said, I think that education is important.
Mm-hmm.
I think it doesn't get utilized because, again, employees hear, oh, you have to go do more. And so that's why I really kind of harp on 4 things. And that is, it needs to be spoon-fed to them. Telling them to go do something isn't really going to work.
Yeah, put them in a room and teach them.
Bite-size, people taking an hour off to go to a training, that can't work for everyone at work. So it needs to be bite-size.
Yeah.
It needs to be short-term. So people see an end date to whatever program they're going to be doing. And it needs to be personalized. And if you think of mental health in America right now, or at least, a lot of people, it's 800 numbers or insurance carriers or whatever, but organizations that really want to make mental health a conversation find ways to personalize it. So for example, I was fortunate enough that when I left my job, one of my accounts signed me to a 5-year contract as kind of their internal face of mental health. And so I do a lot of trainings for them, do a lot of coaching, because they believe in that idea of, if people see the same face over and over, doing teachings or, offering coaching sessions or whatever, there's a comfort level there.
Yes.
And if you make it something that is spoon fed to them, like me popping into a meeting saying, hey, I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing a quick training. I'm on your agenda for 15 minutes. At the end of it, you're going to have an opportunity to sign up for a program we're running that's going to be 8 weeks. I'll drop the sign up link in chat if this is interesting to you, but the 15 minutes we're going to spend together are just going to be a brief kind of example of what you're going to get from the program.
Cool.
Like that type of approach versus go call an 800 number. People don't have to do anything else. They're already in a team meeting they have to attend. And, you just go to the chat, click on the link and sign up right then. So whatever you can do in that regard to spoon feed it to employees, you're going to get better results.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that. I've been involved in a lot of training over the years, and as soon as you outsource that to non-humans, non-mandatory, non-follow-up, like you said, also small pieces over a period of time. It's the only way people learn anyway.
Yeah.
You can't give somebody a 1-hour lecture on mental health.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
The thing that truly made me leave my job was that in the fall of 2020, COVID's raging. People are burned out. You have this division between office workers now and people who still have to come into their jobs and everything. And within the same week, I have 2 of my accounts call me. One's a petroleum company. The other one's just a power company. And they both say the same thing, that our leaders are exhausted and they want a place where they can come together and just kind of talk about things, not only within themselves, but what's happening in their team. Are other people seeing this? How are they reacting? How are they supporting their team? It's kind of eerie how it was like within the same week. And they truly were like, hey, there's nothing else really like this in the marketplace. Everything is either on-demand learning or like individual services. We want more of a group format. So I left my job after delivering it for a year for these 2 accounts, and it went really well. And so now one of the programs I lead, I have 2 other coaches. It's an 8-week group coaching and on-demand learning type program, because the group coaching was so effective with leaders that I first sat there going, what is this, mental fitness coaching stuff? I'm not sure how much I want to disclose. I mean, it's going to hurt my advancement. I am a leader here.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But they quickly realized this was just, hey, how are you taking care of yourself right now? Did you get out for that run that you said you were going to do? Or, you said you were going to get a date night in this weekend. Did that happen? It was just, how are you taking care of yourself? And once they realized that it was more lighthearted than like what they think about mental health at work, because everyone talks about the mental illness. Once they realized, oh, there's just about well-being and having a good foundation for doing that, they really got into it. And so I was like, I'm leaving my job. I'm doing this. And it's going really well. We're excited.
So cool. You find a spot. I love those stories when it's that epiphany hits, you look around, you're like, this is what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
Like and you have to see I think when you see the impact you're having, it really delivers, right? You're like, okay, this is my passion.
You're right.
I'm helping people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 3 years ago, I was doing utilization reports and contract renewals and all that stuff on top of the fun stuff I was doing. But, part of my day was just spent grinding away at stuff that I just did not care about. And now,
and really didn't matter in the scheme of things.
In the whole scheme of things, you're right.
It's just a number on someone's PowerPoint.
Yeah, exactly.
HR showed that to some regional guy. The guy asked a couple of questions, and they went on.
Done. Yeah,
maybe he got a question.
Maybe.
Maybe. And probably it's not good attention anyway. Totally different question, but it's totally related, and it comes back to your benefit side. You're kind of that benefit side. Has there been any quantification of the impact of letting mental health kind of permeate in the workplace, not addressing it? And I've always got that belief that, the hospitals are filled with people as a result of poor mental health, maybe not partially mental illness, poor mental health. I mean, heart attack, stroke, maybe some kinds of cancer, who knows what other kinds of diseases that end up manifesting, to showing up. But really the real cause is how people are thinking and self-caring.
Yeah.
I think the power of us addressing mental health, the people who are worrying well, is that the
worried well?
Yeah, the worried, the impact of worried well becoming ill because of the worry. I mean, they show up in hospitals. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Is there any quantification of how much money we can save if we address the mental health crisis?
It's tricky because some organizations, including my former employer, would say, like, if you add EAP services, we can save you so many, dollars per month per member. And that's almost impossible because year over year, you don't know where those medical claims are going to swing. So to be able to say, you're going to save X amount is really, right off the bat, kind of just impossible.
I was an insurance salesman. I would never allow my reps to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's bananas.
And you really need to move people away from ROI, that return on investment, because it's so difficult to define. And so you'll hear a lot of times in this space, people talking about value of investment instead of return, because it's hard to put those, dollar amounts on there.
Yeah.
But if you look at value of investment, that's when you look at things like not only medical claims, but disability claims. How are those impacted?
Yeah.
How is retention impacted, or recruiting costs or onboarding, costs? Being able to see that there are a number of different areas that will be impacted.
Yes. Yeah.
Able to bring them all together, saying we've seen changes in these areas, but saying, quantifying it to a specific dollar amount really is impossible and pretty unethical, but being able to say it only makes sense that when leaders
it makes sense.
Are better, employees are better. All the data shows happier employees are more effective in their hours, can work longer hours, all that stuff.
Yeah, less sick days and everything else. I mean,
most
sick days are calling in saying, I just can't face my boss tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. I just don't want to hear it.
I don't want to hear. I can't go in for another day of that. I need one more day off.
Yeah, exactly.
I need a break from it. Yeah, that's an interesting, I like the way you articulate that it's really hard, but there are the values that you can quantify: sick days, like I said, turnover, other things you can put some quantifying around. It'd be interesting to see. I'm sure there'll be people. I'm sure this will happen. Those numbers will start to, someone will make those numbers up.
Yeah.
They'll,
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of different people saying a lot of different things. During the pandemic, the venture capital investments in behavioral health technology just skyrocketed. So,
yes,
trying to put quantifications behind that was interesting. It was kind of the Wild West for a couple of years. But bottom line, I think there are a few key ones. Your medical costs. How did those
yep.
change? How did disability change? Knowing depression is
Mm,
the number one driver in disability costs. Like you said, absentee days. If people are leaving the organization in that exit interview, are they mentioning mental health, stress, burnout,
yeah.
difficult relationship with their leader or whatever? So tracking that as well. So there's a number of things that I think are important to look at. But if someone is
Mm,
telling you a hard number of what you can save, be weary.
yeah. Be very wary. Um, well, unless and I think it'll take some years before you get the data that you could show the data to say, here's how I got the number. At
Sure.
least at some point we can maybe see the data. If
Yeah.
you've got two companies in a similar location with similar circumstances, and you measure both independently. It's not trials, it's not clinical stuff, but it'll give people an idea. It won't be long.
Well, it is. It is cool. There's data out there now, and it's more around health, safety, and well-being. But
Hmm.
if you're a company and you
Okay.
win one of like 4 different awards, like there's a Gallup award and a Cup award or something, but what they've done is they've put stock portfolios together of just winners of these awards. So these are companies that are saying they focus on well-being and health and safety more than the average company, and these portfolios always like significantly outperform the S&P. So
Oh,
you can't say this is why, because there are so many factors that go into it.
yes.
But bottom line, if you are one of these award recipients, and you're a publicly traded company, they will put you in a stock portfolio just to watch how you perform against the rest of the market.
I think the reality is that anybody that has those kind of professions and they've planted that flag to do that, you have a lot of your other stuff, your fundamentals are already well taken care of.
Yeah.
I think if you're planting that flag, you've got a lot of the other stuff really well managed.
Sure.
And so, of course, as a company, you're going to perform better than the average company.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's I wouldn't say it's definitely the mental health things that they've added in and that's had an impact, but for sure, anybody doing that level of service for their employees already has a lot of really good things going for them as a management team.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a good measure for me for a different reason.
Yeah.
I would see it. I would see, okay, the mental health part, maybe, right? Like you said, it's hard to quantify it.
Yeah.
But I can quantify the fact that they've made this effort and they've put their name out there, which would tell me they got their shit together.
Yeah. And then there's always that chance of something disastrous happening. And now the company, from a liability perspective, is in hot water. From a cost perspective, is now paying for cleanup of some sort of or another. And so when a company hasn't focused on mental health, it's a lot harder to get their employees on board with something new or concerning or whatever. Like the loss of an employee. Let's say an employee passes away in their sleep, and they have a counselor come on site, And these employees are just like, whatever, the company's doing this just to say they did it. Like, they don't really care. If they really cared, they would do X, Y, and Z. Or, you know, our manager said some hollow words in the meeting, but we know they don't care. And they certainly didn't care about so-and-so who just passed away. Like, when you're fighting that perception in those very difficult moments, it makes the job so much harder than if in the everyday world of working for that company, you felt supported and cared for and all that.
That makes a lot of sense.
So,
Mark, we're at the end of the time.
All right.
And I think we got your story out, and I think very interesting. I love what you're doing.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in going to the workplace for this. I think there's a lot of value in doing this at work, and I think no small stat is the managers having a 70% potential impact in their life.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in the workplace, corporate career in my early days. So, and I did employee benefit plans. So I know a bit about EAPs. I did some analyzing on employee benefit programs. So I played around a lot in that space as an insurance person. So everything you talked about hits home for me, makes absolute sense. Great. You're in a great spot. And I think you're going to do a lot of really, let's say this, you're going to do well by doing good.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
You know, you're in the right place. Any closing thoughts? Any messages for your clients or potential clients? And then I've got your Mark DeFee, DEFWE.com. I've got your banner up. So maybe any closing thoughts on how do people find you and how do they get involved, and anything else you're working and passionate about you'd want help on?
Yeah, thanks. And let me just start by saying thank you for inviting me to be on here. One, I was very excited to be here, but two, just seeing that there's just another person out there getting the word out about mental health and how we need to talk about it, how we need to look at it from so many different perspectives. Thank you. I think that's greatly needed. For me, I work with organizations that want to try something new, that recognize they might have an issue going on with their employees, and they want to take some steps to address it, but maybe they don't want to take on a long, contract with a new vendor partner or something. I run a program called Thrive Again program. It's an 8-week mental skills boot camp. So it's a short-term, contract for companies who might just be looking to dip their toes in the water with trying something. It's kind of all those things I mentioned earlier in terms of spoon-fed to them, bite-size, short-term, very personal, like from the beginning. They see me, I'm your coach for the next 8 weeks. We're going to be doing a number of things together. So it's delivering that program, but also doing a lot of custom work for organizations who will sit down and say, what's going on with your employees right now? And how can we specifically support them? And a lot of companies will say, well, we don't know. And it's like, okay, well, that's where we need to start.
I love that.
So whatever company is out there sitting there going, yeah, maybe we do want to try something new and see what results we can change, I'd love to talk to you. Yeah,
it's great. And again, Mark, I mean, big appreciation for what you're doing, getting out there and, taking the risk, leaving corporate, putting your shingle out and trying to do good. And I love turning your own personal story into something powerful.
Hey,
it's amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks. And a big thanks out to anybody listening, especially if you're listening to the recorded version of this. Just down below, all of Mark's microphone's down there in the notes, but also all of Mark's social media and stuff is down in the notes, and how to find him and everything else if you're catching the show on one of our audio platforms. So, Mark, this show's live now. It'll be posted on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Cool. And so this actual video will be on there, and then we'll be posting an audio version on the classical channels in a couple weeks. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah. Big thanks again. Hang on for 30 seconds. I got one more commercial. I'll say goodbye to you on the other side.
Sounds good.
Yeah, loose, baby.
But we're about to go and make this vessel with these great professionals in public glass. We're not part of the community, but we're from the outer family of glass blowing. Yeah, we're going to go make a magical giant jar. with optic lenses so that if you turn it, it changes all the time. So if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Eye to eye with the man